Welcome, everybody, to the Emerging Civil War podcast. I'm Darren Rawlings, and joining me today from Orange, Virginia, is Mike Block. Welcome, Mike.
Welcome, Darren. Thank you. Looking forward to this.
Excellent. And so we are going to discuss something really, really important that's been going on for quite some time, and that is we're going to talk about Culpeper Battlefields State Park, which was dedicated on June the 8th, 2024, and comprises of more than 2,000 acres of land. And of course, it's preserved sites like Brandy Station, Cedar Mountain, Kelly's Ford, and Rappahannock Station. So quite a big area. Now, Mike, I understand that you have been involved in this preservation process at Culpeper State Park for quite some time. So could you go back and recount when and how you got involved in this project?
Sure, absolutely. The process of saving this land actually began back in the 1980s, late 1980s. I got involved in 2004 when I moved to the area and joined what was then the Brandy Station Foundation. Well, they still are the Brandy Station Foundation. And as a docent at one of their structures, it's the called the Graffiti House. It has Civil War era graffiti. I also got involved in the battlefields at Brandy Station and Rappahannock Station in that part of the county. And then we started learning of the threat that was out there from development throughout the region as it slowly expanded. It began in '88, so I picked it up in midstream after we'd already fought a battle. We, the preservationists, had fought a battle to stop an industrial park on the Brandy Station battlefield and a Formula One racetrack out there. So I jumped in kind of feet first to a conflict that had been ongoing for 15 years.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned the track there, but I believe there's an airport as well, wasn't there, that did actually eventually get built on the Brandy Station battlefield. Is that correct?
Right. The airport was built in the 1960s, I believe, and so that was before there was any real preservation movement in Culpeper. So the airport was there, and that land was lost right away.
Okay.
There's been the airport has tried a couple different times to expand, but they have been thwarted.
Okay. And so obviously you're more involved, I understand, with Cedar Mountain, the Battle of Cedar Mountain battlefield. So how and what was it about Cedar Mountain that really drew your interest? Because again, you've got, four great sites here, but the Cedar Mountain battle really jumps out at you. So what is it about that that really got you, excited about Cedar Mountain?
It's a forgotten campaign. I believe that Cedar Mountain is the end of the 1862 Richmond campaign, and it sets up Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee for the Second Manassas campaign. There was not a lot written on it. Only one book on the topic prior to my book, which was published in 2022. And I felt that the story needed to be told, and I got myself involved as a volunteer and joined the board of at that time, the Friends of Cedar Mountain Battlefield. And I've been involved with them for just about a decade, learning about the battle, developing tours, learning its history, and identifying land that needs to be saved out there.
Okay, thank you for that. And so for people that don't know about the Battle of Cedar Mountain, would you like to give us a little bit of history of what that engagement entails and what it's about, please?
Sure. The battle was fought on August 9th, 1862. And as I said, I believe it's the last fight in the Richmond campaign. Robert E. Lee is trying to keep the federal armies away from Richmond. He's just defeated George McClellan in the 7 Days campaign, and he has John Pope's army of Virginia, 42,000 strong, moving south. He dispatches Stonewall Jackson in his last independent campaign to, as I like to say, punch Pope in the nose and take the initiative away from him, which he does successfully at Cedar Mountain. Temperatures on the day of the battle were in the upper 90s easily, with heat indexes well over 100, as it had been for several days before the fight. The fight takes place over the course really of about 3.5 or 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon, and the Federals suffer about 21% casualties of those men involved, the largest percentage of soldier casualties in the Federal Army from those involved throughout the war. Jackson's got still about 2,500 men. Um, Jackson suffers 1,300 men, and he stops Pope short. He forces him back and gives Lee the opportunity to take the initiative away from Richmond and go up to towards the federal capital and eventual Battle of Second Manassas.
Okay. And I know a little while ago you mentioned the Friends of Cedar Mountain Battlefield. So just tell us a little bit about that organization, how that sort of came about. And
Sure, that organization came about in the early 2000s with a develop when they saw a need to protect and preserve that part of the battlefield. The majority of the Cedar Mountain battlefield is owned by one farming family, and when the matriarch of the family passed, the land was divided up among the brothers. Fortunately, the precursor to the American Battlefield Trust worked with one of the landowner's sons and purchased the original, I think it was 135 acres of the key battlefield area where the Crittenden farm lane is, the Culpeper Road, the area called the Point, and the wheat field. All that land became preserved land, and that was the first piece of land saved at Cedar Mountain. And the Friends Group was established to be a steward to that field and to the and as a communication point for all the landowners in the areas. And working with them, we have saved several hundred other more acres, as well as developed a really strong relationship with the local community in that part of the county.
okay, thank you, mate. Yeah. And so I know also you mentioned obviously challenges and threats for in particular Brandy Station, but what sort of challenges and threats were Cedar Mountain Battlefield facing?
We have we've had narrow threats right now. There's always the threat of solar industrial parks out there. So people call them solar farms. There's no farming done out there. The land is destroyed with those solar fields. So we've had a couple near threats. Some landowners have been contacted about solar farms or industrial parks near the battlefield. There are some being developed within about 15 miles of the park. We've had some farms that have changed some of the way they do business. So we've got a lot more farm traffic or trucks on the roads, and we have the crawl of development slowly encroaching on the battlefield. We've had a couple housing developments within about 5 miles. We had a threat of a Sheetz gas station, I believe it was going to be. That was the word on some property that the American Battlefield Trust purchased a couple of years ago. So development is always encroaching closer and closer to the to Cedar Mountain Battlefield, and that's one thing that the Culpeper Battlefield State Park will hopefully alleviate in some form.
Yeah. So obviously you've saved a fair bit of that land, but is there still pieces of that battlefield that you still have to try and
At,
piece together?
at Cedar Mountain, there's two key areas, and they're both they're under the same family's ownership. They work well with the preservation community, so there's no direct threat right now. But there's two prime areas. The one of them is the area where the Federals launched an attack on Jackson's left flank and overran that position. I call that position Crawford's Hill, where Samuel Crawford and his brigade charged and attacked Jackson's left flank. And the whole right of the battlefield is in farmland on private property, and that's where Christopher Augur's division attacked across and was defended by Jubal Early, George Thomas, and the rest of Richard Ewell's division on August 9th. All that land is farmland and not protected right now.
Okay. And how involved are the local community in looking after their battlefield? And because I know obviously it's quite a community from what I understand.
It is. The community has been involved from the beginning. There has been resistance from developers, of course. Some members of the Culpeper Board of Supervisors are very development friendly and have endorsed some of the developers, like the industrial park and the Formula One track. The biggest threat to our development now are the data centers that are being developed throughout Northern Virginia. They have spread down into Culpeper. Recently, the Culpeper Board of Supervisors approved the development of a data center right next to the Culpeper National Cemetery, literally right next to it. There's another data center being built by Amazon in an area just east of Culpeper, just east of Culpeper, on the Hansborough Ridge area, which saw fighting on June 9th. The ground saw fighting on June 9th, and that is in the vicinity, if not on, an area where dead from the winter encampment were buried. So it's the community. There's a large preservation supported community here, but just as easily, just as many people who want to see development.
Yeah. And obviously, there's still lots of work to do. But you have, what was that moment like when you finally all came together? And I've seen the amazing photograph of you guys standing over the sign when you finally dedicated the state park and all of that hard work for all of those years paid off. How was that for you personally?
It was an outstanding. The whole day was an outstanding day, a wonderful day of really joy and coming together to see people, some I hadn't seen in decades, gathered to celebrate the success of the Culpeper Battlefields State Park. The state park process began, I think, in late 2014 or 2015. So we're talking 9 to 10 years from initiating the concept of a state park in Culpeper to its eventual inauguration as the 43rd state park in Virginia. It was there were times where we didn't think it was going to happen. The initial study funds for the state park were line itemed out of the Commonwealth of Virginia state budget for 3 straight years, and that's just earmarking $5,000 to $10,000 to do this study. So it was a long, frustrating fight, but to see that culmination up there a month or so ago now, it was just a fabulous experience, and I was just so glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, and of course, what's going to come out of that is we're going to be able to, everyone is going to be able to enjoy this park for years and years to come. And so my question is, the accessibility of for the public to visit these parks and just explain a little bit about that if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, it's both the land that's owned by the American Battlefield Trust is being transferred to the state at Cedar Mountain and Brandy Station are both basically turnkey operations. Parking is available at both locations. There are established trails and paths with signage on both locations. Both locations have friends groups, which are willing and able to step up and volunteer support. Parks easily accessed on the major roads through Culpeper. And we're expecting some of the numbers we're seeing, over 100,000 visitors the first full year at this park. And these are really right now rough parks. They're not developed as you would think of as a park. Right now they are battlefield parks. Mm-hmm. I can envision along the way horse trails for Brandy Station. It was a cavalry fight. Horse trails. Brandy Station area has access to the Hazel and Rappahannock River, so there's water. There's water activities that can be developed here. They've talked, camping, of course, at a state park. They've talked about building Civil War era cabins so you can camp like a soldier did, hopefully without the lice. So yeah. we're hoping. There's lots of opportunities here that have yet to be developed.
Yeah, and so is there going to be some kind of visitor center as well? Is that in the plans?
There is a plan, and because if you see the locations, the two key areas, Cedar Mountain and Brandy Station, are probably about 15 miles apart. So do you put a visitor center in the middle at some point, or do you put it at one of the parks with big kiosks at the other? I don't think that's been determined yet by the state. I know at one time they were looking at a visitor center kind of in between, and covered shelters or kiosks at both sites, with maybe or maybe not a ranger presence as the park develops and grows. Because so much happened here, a visitor center is going to happen, obviously, but there's also room for museum and archives here, and hopefully that will be included in the plans for this center.
Awesome. That is amazing. Now, obviously, you've mentioned, you know, some of the organisations that are involved in this, local communities and that. But how would people get involved if someone's listening to this and they think, you know what, I want to get involved with the preservation? How do they get involved in this sort of thing?
The easiest one for Culpeper right now is the American Battlefield Trust. They are the overarching umbrella for battlefield preservation, not only Civil War, but War of 1812 and Revolutionary War in the country. The Friends of Culpeper Battlefields is an organization kind of within the American Battlefield Trust. A lot of sponsorship comes from them, and they kind of wrangle or manage all the groups, put them under an umbrella so there's one voice in Culpeper. And then in Culpeper, the Friends of Cedar Mountain Battlefield and the Brandy Station Foundation are the key ones within Culpeper, as well as there's a museum here, and the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust has played a key role, and they are centered and their focus is on the Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania area battlefields. So all of them are right there in Culpeper or around Culpeper. Anyone can find those links very easily if they just Google any of those names.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, appreciate that. Now, we do have to mention something really cool, and that is obviously your book that you wrote for the Emergency of a War series, Mike.
Right.
So would you like to tell us about, so did Chris have to twist your arm, or no twisting of arms? It was just, let's write a book about this
There was
battle.
absolutely no twisting of arms in this case. I had written in, I think, 2016, an article for the now defunct Blue and Gray magazine. Great organization. Dave Roth was a wonderful editor, and he reached out to me and asked me to write an article on Cedar Mountain because he had never done one before. There was never anything in his 30 plus years of publication on Cedar Mountain. And so I put out an article for him on that. And the way his magazine format was solely on that one topic. And so my article was the magazine. I'm going to guess that Chris saw that, and we'd talked at some point in the past, and he reached out to me to do a book, and I said absolutely. And I had it probably about 2/3 of the way done, and I was reaching the end of my career. I'm retired now, but I was also writing contracts and working proposals and managing a workforce. And by the time I got home at 8 o'clock at night, sometimes I just didn't want to get on the computer and type. So it kind of languished for a little bit. And then once COVID hit and I retired, I was able to complete the project fairly quickly. And it came out in January 2022. And this past March, we've had a second printing. So a successful book. And I'm very proud of that. I am in the process of working on a second Cedar Mountain book, going more in depth and detailed on the fight there. Chris, the Emerging Civil War book is a great introduction to the battle, just like all the Emerging Civil War series are great introductions. But I think it deserves more.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And Mike, how satisfying would it be to have a visitor centre and in that bookshop have your book on the bookshelf there, you know, for people to be able to, you know, use on the battlefield?
Outstanding. And the ECW book is great for that. Dan Davis and Eric Wittenberg, I believe, did one on Brandy Station. So they have that book. And you can just pick up those books in the visitor center, turn to the chapter or turn to the back and use the book as a driving tour and see the sites as and watch the battle as it developed from the ground where it actually was fought.
Yeah.
I'm close enough to be up there. I'll go up there and sign the books. Just give me a call.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you want to know what the book is called, guys, it's called The Carnage Was Fearful, The Battle of Cedar Mountain, August the 9th, 1862 by Michael Block. So yeah, it's you can find that at savage.com or emergencywarwar.com as well. You can find links to that. So have a look for that. So a massive, quickly before I get your final thoughts, Mike, a massive shout out, as Mike has said, to American Battlefield Trust for all the hard work they do, Central Virginia Battlefields Trust as well, and all the other organisations that have been involved in this amazing project. But final thoughts, what I'd love to know, Mike, is its importance to you.
You know, I've got three granddaughters. Two of them aren't interested very much in the Civil War yet, but my 7-year-old, the youngest one, really is. I had her out at Cedar Mountain on the American Battlefield Trust last Park Day, and I look at her out there cleaning signs and raking, and these parks and saving this ground is giving our future generations an opportunity to see where American history took place. And if we lose some of that to data centers or housing developments, all it is a sign along the road saying something happened here. They
Yeah.
need, these parks need to be, this ground needs to be preserved so our future generations can understand and see American history first person.
Amen to that, Mike. Amen. And so all that is left to say, Mike, is thank you for coming on to the Emergency War podcast.
Well, thank you, Darren, for the opportunity.
Excellent. And from Mike Block, I'm Darren Rawlings. Thank you for listening to the Emergency War podcast. We'll see you online and on the battlefield. Cheers.
Cheers.
Excelente.